Hello everybody and welcome back. It's been a while since I've done a Leaving Earth video. The last one I did was on the base game, and at the time I had a request or two to do an Outer Planets playthrough, and I just never got around to it. So now I'm going to do Outer Planets and Stations expansion together. And much like the last one, I'm not going to be going through each and every rule like a rules walkthrough. But I think if you follow along and you've read the rules but you haven't played before, I think you'll get a good idea of what the game is about and how to get started with it. So I've got set up here a game, like I said, of Leaving Earth with the Outer Planets and the Stations expansion. I've already got the missions laid out up top, and I'll go through them in just a second. I'm doing a very hard run through, which means that I'll have 1 easy, 6 medium, 6 hard, and 6 outer planet non-explorable missions, in addition to the extraterrestrial life and the occupation mission. And just to make things interesting, typically when I play, especially with outer planets, I really like using ion engines, and I also have used the reusable rockets quite a bit. But I'm actually going to try to do this walkthrough without using either of those technologies. So just to have an added twist to it. So the missions that you can see up top here that I need to accomplish, right now it's 1956, so by the end of 1986 the missions I need to accomplish are to reveal extraterrestrial life, get a man into space, get a man into lunar flyby, do an experiment on the moon, get a sample return from the moon, and get a man on the moon. Got a few over on Mercury, which are going to be difficult without the use of ion engines, and that's Mercury Lander and Man on Mercury. A couple or 3 of them on Venus, Venus Habitat, Experiment, and Station. I've only got 2 out on Mars, but one of them is the Occupation mission. So Man on Mars and Mars Occupation. But there is one on Phobos, the Phobos Sample Return. So those could be worth more points than they look, especially with that Occupation, if I can get to that early. I've got Man on Ceres. And then over in the outer planets, I pulled a lot of the Jupiter, the moons over there, Callisto, Europa, Io, and then Jupiter survey. Jupiter system survey will require me to survey Ganymede and Jupiter itself. And then in Saturn is Titan survey and Saturn survey. So the only ones, so as part of the solo rules, the playthrough for it, the idea is I need to get more than half of the points that are remaining on the board at the end of the game. So it's going to be more than just you see here. It's going to be more than just what you see here as well. Anytime you flip over an outer planet's location, another mission pops up. So in order to complete the game, I need to have more than half the points, and in addition to that, I need to complete every one of the outer planet's non-explorable missions, and those are the ones that are currently turned over right now. What that means is I don't necessarily have to survey Enceladus. If I flip it over, if I do survey Enceladus, I will get a mission, but if I don't survey it, I won't get an extra mission. So I may or may not survey it depending on how the game is going. And I don't have Uranus or Neptune to survey either, but those don't produce extra missions, so that's not too big of a deal. But what that does mean is I don't have to worry about the transfers out to Uranus or Neptune. I just have to do Jupiter and Saturn. So looking at this right now, I'm actually a little daunted by what I see in front of me here, since I've chosen not to do the ion engines. I think the Ceres, the Mercury ones, those are going to be difficult, and depending on what I pull out in the outer solar system, those could be pretty difficult as well. But we'll just go ahead and get started and go from there and see how we do. Alright, to start with, we're going to go ahead and buy 3 rocket technologies. I'm going to buy Saturn, Juno, and Atlas rocket tech. I think these are the 3 that I'm going to be using. These are the 3 I'm going to try to use throughout the game here. And I don't think I'll need anything else, but, you know, we'll see how the game goes. So let me go ahead and put the outcomes here on here. And then starting next year, we'll start building rockets. So 1957, my money comes back, but I'm just going to buy 2 Saturn rockets, and that's going to be it. 1958, I'm going to buy the parts that I need to do the mission that I've got coming up here. So I'm going to buy 4 Atlas rockets, that's $20. And I'm going to buy 2 Junos, and I'm going to buy 4 probes. And that is everything. That's $30. And we move to 1959. I'm going to do something a little risky here and launch everything I have except for one of the Atlas rockets. Along with 2 Saturn rockets, we're going to go to orbit. So payload that a Saturn can push on difficulty 3 from Earth to suborbital space is 46 2/3. And then I've got a total payload mass that I'm trying to get to orbit of 18, and a Saturn rocket itself is 20. So basically I'm pushing up a Saturn rocket and the payload from Earth to suborbital space, and then that Saturn rocket will push the payload up to Earth orbit. And a Saturn rocket can push 20 payload across a difficulty of 5. So a Saturn and Saturn will be enough as long as they are both successes. If one of them is a minor failure, it's not great, but we can work around it. If I get a major failure, that's going to be a pretty big problem here. So the first one, from Earth to suborbital space, is a success. I'm going to pay to remove that. So we're here, and I burned one of the Saturns, and the next one up to Earth orbit is a success. I'm going to pay to get rid of that one as well. That was highly fortunate. So we've gotten rid of 2 of our Saturn rockets. It's 1959. I need to leave next year, but what that means is I need to test the Atlas rockets on board before we get to that point. So I've got $10 right now. I'm going to go ahead and test fire the 1 Atlas rocket that's on the ground. It's a success. I'm going to pay to remove that outcome. And then next year I will buy 2 more Atlas rockets and test them before these have to go. There are Juno rockets on board as well, so again, this ship right now consists of a few Atlas rockets, some Juno rockets, and 4 probes. But the Juno rockets aren't needed for 2 more years, 3 more at this point. So move into 1960. 1960, I get the money back. I'm going to buy 2 Atlas rockets. That is $10. And I'm going to test fire both of them just on the ground. So first one is a success. I'll pay 10 to get rid of that. And the last one is a success, so that's free to get rid of. So the Atlas rockets are good to go. And I have $10 remaining. So I think with the $10 I have remaining, I'm going to buy survey tech. And I'm out of money now for the year. And I'm going to go ahead and survey solar radiation with one of the 4 probes that I have on this ship. So I need to get an outcome card for it. And let's go ahead and survey. A success. There's only 1 outcome card on surveying, so that is good to go. What do we have for solar radiation? Level 2. Level 2 radiation. So astronauts, it will be a little bit difficult to get astronauts out and about. We'll have some radiation to deal with. So I'm out of money. It's 1960. I'm going to try to do the 1960 transfer window here for Jupiter and Saturn. So 2 Atlas rockets across a difficulty of 3 to interplanet transfer is a total of 10 payload, and that's exactly what I have on this ship. So they're going to move out to interplanet transfer, and that's going to take a year to do. And that's everything that I can do for this turn. So we'll move to 1961, take the time token off. From here I can survey Ceres because I have the hazard symbol here in this spot, so I'll go ahead and do that. I can explore till I have 1 feature present there. What I need to do is buy Juno rockets and test them on the ground. So I'll just go ahead and start with 3. And I'll go ahead and test fire them. So the first one is a success, pay to get rid of that one. Next one is a success, pay to get rid of that. And the last one is a success, so that no money is required for that one. Had a lot of successes so far. Typically successes are good, but when you're test firing rockets on the ground like that, I'd really rather see some failures. They are cheaper to remove. But we are done with Juno rocket testing, and we've only got 1 card left on Saturn rockets, so that's good. We're in a good spot right now. I think what I'll do is buy an Atlas rocket for the ground, as well as another probe. Those are always useful. So that's all the money for this turn. And then with that ship in interplanet transfer, I got one more Atlas going across a difficulty of 2 this time, so I can push a payload of 9.5. I now have a payload of 6, so that's more than enough, and it will go on its way to Venus flyby, and that will take a year to get there. Alright, 1962. We've arrived at Venus flyby, and so what we need to do at this point is to survey it. So if Venus turns out to be something that can't be landed on, I can flip over several of those missions over there. If it is something that can be landed on, then I've got some work cut out for me. So here we go. Alright, spacecraft destroyed by extreme heat and pressure. So what that means is that these 3 cannot be completed and will be turned over. It's good and bad. Some of those missions are somewhat doable in this game here. Well, they're all doable, but I was planning on doing them. But now those are points that I won't be able to get to counteract any points that come up over in outer planets. So, alright, we're going to move from Venus flyby now. We are at a Jupiter transfer window that's going to go out to Jupiter flyby. It's a difficulty of 1, and so what I need are 2 Juno rockets to move this payload of 4. So that's exactly what I've got, and it is on its way to Jupiter flyby. That's a 1-year maneuver. With my money this turn, I'm going to buy a Saturn rocket for 15. I need to save 5 to pay for any failures that I might have from launching this rocket. With $10, I'm going to buy 4 Juno rockets. I'm going to buy a probe, so that's $6. I'm also going to buy, I'll buy 4 more Juno rockets. I'll probably need them at some point. So, just buy some rockets. And I've got some stuff on the ground here. That's $10. I'm going to launch a probe and 4 Juno rockets up into space, sitting atop 1 Saturn rocket. And so this rocket here is going to go directly from Earth to Earth orbit. It's a difficulty of 8. 1 Saturn rocket can do 5 payload across difficulty of 8. So we have 1 more outcome card. Let's put this here. We're going to flip it for the Saturn rocket. It's a major failure. I'm going to pay to remove that. So it's unfortunate, but you know, it wasn't that much money that I just lost in terms of payload, so it's alright. But now the Saturn rocket tech is good to go. I would rather have seen that major failure happen there than with the more important stack of rockets that are currently moving to Jupiter. So that's fine. Moving to 1963, money comes back. We are at Jupiter flyby now. So what I'm going to do, I've got 4 probes there. I'm going to turn over each of the moons. I'm going to survey Ganymede with one of them, Io with one, Europa with one, and Callisto with one. And we will automatically get the Jupiter card flipped over when we move automatically from Jupiter to Saturn flyby. That's part of what you have to experience here on the card. So we'll go ahead and just start flipping them over. Ganymede is liquid ocean under miles of rock and ice. Io is valuable minerals, sample on Earth is worth $75. Europa is liquid water ocean under thin ice crust. And Callisto has valuable minerals on it. So what I need to do now, I'll do it in just a second here, but I'll need to draw new missions for each of those. And as I move off to Saturn flyby, that's a 2-year maneuver, we flip Jupiter over to see what it has. So this is the most extreme radiation Jupiter possibility that one can get. So on a 1 to a 6, astronauts become incapacitated, and the probes, even on a 1 to a 4, get damaged. So right now I've got 4 probes on here. I need to roll for each one of them. On a 1 through 4, they become damaged. So the first one is damaged. The second one is not damaged. The third one is damaged. And the fourth one is damaged. So I only have 1 working probe at the moment in this stack. So we'll go ahead and flip that over. But thankfully, that is all I will need to complete my Saturn missions here. So Jupiter is pretty brutal. That's going to be tough. So we'll go ahead and draw the missions for each of those moons and for Jupiter. Jupiter System Survey, Io Survey, Europa Survey, and Callisto Survey. So I've got a few points building up here, but I'm about to have a lot more show up on the table. So for Jupiter over there, it wants me to pull an Alpha mission. There's only one of them. That is Jupiter Orbiter. So get a working probe or capsule into Jupiter orbit. For Ganymede, it needs me to pull an Alpha. There are 2 of them, so I'm just going to randomly decide. That's going to be the first one. So I need to get a Ganymede lander. For Europa over there, Europa's a beta. So there are 3 choices. 4, so that's going to be the second one. If I have 3 choices, 1 to 2 is the first one, 3 to 4 is the second, 5 to 6 is the third, and then if it's a 7 or 8, I just re-roll. So that is this mission here. It's a sample return from Europa. Callisto is Alpha. There's only one mission for Europa. That's a lander. Or I'm sorry, Callisto. There's only one mission. And then Io needs an Alpha mission. There are 3 possibilities. That's the first one, which is a sample return. All right. I've got the missions laid out over there that we're looking to do, and we'll just go forward from here. So 1963, I think what I'm going to do here is buy a few technologies. I'm just going to get them going here. It's going to be life support, re-entry, and rendezvous, and that is it. That's all my money. So moving to 1964, time token comes off. I'm going to buy some more technology. I'm going to buy landing. That's $10. I'm going to buy a probe, 2 Vostok capsules, an Apollo capsule. That's another 10, and 2 more Atlas rockets. That's all of my money for the year. I need outcome cards for the landing tech. Alright, moving to 1965. The Saturn probe is there, so we're going to survey Titan with my 1 remaining card. It's got a thick atmosphere of nitrogen and methane. So that's mission Alpha. There are 4 of them. So that's a 3. That's the second one. And that's Man on Titan. That's a lot of points that probably won't happen. And then as I am lost at the end of the turn, I will flip over Saturn. And that's plain, it's just nothing. So it wants mission Beta. There are 2 options for that. The second one. And that's a manned Saturn flyby. With my money for 1965, I'm just going to buy 2 Saturn rockets. I have a feeling I'm going to need a lot of these. 1966, I'm going to buy the synthesis and aerobraking technology. These should be the last ones I need. I'm also going to buy 2 Atlas rockets. I'm going to need a lot of them as well. Right. 1967, money comes back. At this point, I think I just need to keep buying Saturn rockets. Again, I'm going to need quite a few of them. So 1967, I'm going to buy 2 Saturn rockets. $1968, I'll buy 2 Saturn rockets. 1969, I'll buy 2 Saturn rockets. Just kind of stockpiling the rockets here. Move to 1970. I'm going to buy a space habitat, as well as 2 more Atlas rockets. Move to 1971. Alright, 1971, I'm going to start launching a few things. I'm going to take 4 of my Atlas rockets, 4 of my Juno rockets, and combine them together into one of our ships here. This is going to be, let's use this symbol here. I'm going to use 2 of my Saturn rockets. I've got a payload of 20 here, so 2 Saturn rockets will get that up to Earth orbit. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then once we're up there, what I'm going to do is test rendezvous with the Juno rockets. So in the rule book, the way to do this is I'm just going to go until I find a failure, and then if I have a success, I can just leave it up for the time being. So the first one is a failure, so I stop here, I damage a part, and I pay $5 to get rid of that. So I'm going to get rid of that card. Alright, I'm going to test rendezvous again. First one is a minor failure, so I'm going to pay another $5 to get rid of that, and that'll be another Juno rocket that's been damaged. And then I'm going to test it again, and the last one is a success, so it goes away for free. I'm going to send these 2 Juno rockets back down to Earth. They're damaged, but they'll flip over next turn. I have $20 still. I'm going to buy 2 medics for 10, and I'm going to buy 1 medical supply and 9 food. I'm also going to use 2 Saturns to launch up another Saturn to get that as part of my rocket stack here. Move to 1972. Our money comes back. The Juno rockets that were damaged are fine now. And I'll just put all of these supplies out here. Okay, I've got all my money here. I'm going to take 2 Saturn rockets to launch up, 2 Atlas rockets, 2 Juno rockets, so that's a mass of 10, all 9 of the food, and a medical supply. That's a mass of 20. That's going to be added to that same stack that we've been collecting in orbit. I'll spend the $30 that I have this year on 2 more Saturns. Move to 1973. Alright, here in 1973, I'm going to buy 2 Atlas rockets and 2 food. That's $10. And I'm going to launch up on 2 Saturn rockets. I'm going to launch 3 Atlas rockets, 2 Vostoks, an Apollo, and 1 food. That's a mass of 20. We'll send that up in a different icon. And I've got $20 left. At the end of the year here, I've got 3 capsules now up in space, so I'm going to test life support with them. So the first one is a success. I'll pay to get rid of that. The next one is a success. I'll pay to get rid of that. I'm currently out of money. So we'll see what the last one is. It's a minor failure. So I don't have the money to get rid of that, but I know now that there is a minor failure there, and I need to pay $5 to get rid of that. So we'll move to 1974. Alright, for 1974, I'm going to buy 1 Saturn rocket. I'm going to buy 2 Atlas rockets. I have $5 remaining, and at the end of the year, I'm going to test life support, and I will pay the $5 I need to get rid of the remaining failure. Okay, so for 75, I'm going to buy 2 Saturn rockets. Move to 76, 2 more Saturn rockets. And in 77, 2 more Saturn rockets. Move to 1978. Okay, for 1978, I'm going to spend $5 to buy 5 Juno rockets. And we're going to launch some astronauts into space for the first time here. So here we go. It's going to be 2 Saturn rockets are going to take up a space habitat with my 2 astronauts. They're also going to take up 2 Atlas rockets, so that's a mass of 17, so I can take 3 more Juno rockets with me. So they're going to go to space, but I haven't gone through suborbital space yet with humans, so I do need to flip that over. Okay, on a die roll of 1, they become incapacitated. That's not too bad. So the first medic and the second medic. So one of them does become incapacitated, but I did send up some medical supplies up into the orbiting space station, so they'll be able to heal themselves. I'll go ahead and discard that and won't bother flipping them over at this point. But the 2 Saturns go away. The 3 Juno rockets and the 2 Atlas rockets I'm going to disconnect and put over there. And now we have our first big rocket here that we're going to send off and try to do some of these missions. It's a lot of rockets. It's the main component here is a space habitat, so radiation will not be a concern this entire trip. And it is time to get a move on. So the first maneuver that this ship is going to do is go to interplanet transfer. It's a difficulty of 3. The payload is 46, which is gigantic, but 1 Saturn rocket can do 46 2/3 across a difficulty of 3. So perfect. So 1 Saturn rocket down, they're going to go across the interplanet transfer. That is a 1-year maneuver. With my remaining $25, I'm going to buy 5 Atlas rockets. Oh, I don't even have 5 Atlas rockets. Okay, so what I will do at this point is I'm just going to use the ion engine, since I'm not using ion engines. Ion engines will stand in for Atlas rockets as need be. So I'll buy 5 of them for $25, and since that is a total mass of 20, I'm just going to take 2 Saturn rockets and launch them up into space. Alright, so for my spaceship with the astronauts, it's moving off into interplanet transfer. There are 2 astronauts. They are in a space habitat, so they don't have any worries about radiation. They also don't have any worries for their mental health check because there are 2 of them. They're not alone. And then in addition to that, less than half the seats, less than or equal to half of the seats of the spaceship are occupied. So the space habitat has a capacity of 20. I've only got 2 astronauts there, so that's plenty. So at no point during this journey am I going to have to worry about radiation or the mental health check for them. But at the end of the year, they will consume 1 food, and we'll move to 1979. So the time token will come off, money gets flipped over, and we'll go ahead and do their next maneuver. They're going to move from interplanet transfer to Venus flyby. It is a payload of 30 across a difficulty of 2, so 3 Atlas and 3 Juno rockets will do that burn. It's a 1-year maneuver. Now that I have some Atlas rockets, I'll go ahead and change this one out, the ion thruster. I'm going to just reorganize my Earth orbit stack here a little bit since rendezvous is good to go. Okay, so purchases for 1979 will be 2 Saturn rockets. And that's all the money I have for that. So moving to 1980, 1 food gets eaten. At the end of 79, the time token comes off, and we are in Venus flyby. I have a payload of 24. An Atlas and a Juno rocket will push this off to Jupiter flyby. And that's 1 time, or 1 year. For the other mission that I'm going to be doing, I need to get some Saturn rockets up into space. So I'm going to burn 2 Saturn rockets to get 1 Saturn rocket up and add it to that stack. With my money this year, I'll buy 4 Atlas rockets. So here's 3 and a 4th. I'm going to buy an astronaut, and I'm going to buy a science module. So that's all of my money. I'm going to launch the 4 Atlas rockets, 2 Juno rockets, and 2 probes I've had sitting on the ground. I'm going to launch all those to space. So that's a mass of 20. So that's going to go up on Saturn, 2 Saturn rockets. And I will organize these here shortly. And so this ship here I just created is going to be, it's going to be the aero braking tester. And that will complete 1980. So moving on to 1981, at the end of the year here, this food is eaten, and the time token comes off, the money comes back. We're going to move to Saturn Flyby. It's a difficulty 0 maneuver. It's going to take 2 years for them to get out there. And when we get there, we'll have to do aero braking, but we don't have to worry about that right now. With the $30 this year, that's 2 Saturn rockets. And I'll go ahead and use these 2 Saturn rockets to launch up to space the Saturn rocket and add it to the stack here. So the plan here, and I realize I haven't fully communicated this, the plan's kind of been a work in progress because I'm trying to figure out the best way to go about getting the most number of points I can to get over the halfway mark. And so this ship over here is heading out to Titan. I'm going to hopefully complete manned Saturn Flyby and man on Titan with that. And then over here, this conglomeration of ships is going to do the lunar missions, with the exception of the lunar experiment, I think. And then the Mercury missions. We'll try to do that. Moving on to 1982. Food gets eaten. A time token comes off. Money comes back. 2 Saturn rockets are bought. That's all of the money. And that's it. Moving on to 1983. Food is eaten. Time token comes off. Money comes back. And so now we are in Saturn Flyby. Oh, and also I forgot, I took a look at the footage again, and I realized I had completed Man in Space at the start of the year a while ago, so I'll go ahead and take that one. And I have done Man Saturn Flyby now. So I'm in Saturn Flyby, and I'm back because I'm in a habitat. Okay, before we do the Saturn orbit maneuver here that's got the aero braking on it, I do have, right over here, I have this ship here. It's going to use its Atlas rocket to push it out to Earth Cycler. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then once I'm there, I'm going to break these apart. I've got a probe, a Juno rocket, and another probe, and they're all going to use that 0 difficulty maneuver to aero brake back into Earth orbit. So we're going to test aero braking, and we'll hope for the best. Really, the Saturn mission must succeed at all costs, so I'll just be removing all of these outcomes, I think. So the first probe is a success. I'll pay to get rid of that result. The next probe is a major failure, so that gets destroyed. I will pay to remove that. And then the last one is a success, so that one is free. So I'll go ahead and get rid of those. And then back in Earth orbit, one of the Junos and one of the probes did survive. And I have $15 left, which is convenient because now I'm going to use that probe. I'm going to send it down to Earth, and I'm going to test landing with it. So let's test landing. I've got a success. I'm going to pay to remove that. I'm going to send this Juno back down to Earth to test landing with that. It's a success. I don't have any money to remove that, so I'm just going to have to leave that in the stack. Just sort of hoping that it might have been a failure and we could have gotten rid of that with the last $5 here. But that comes back to Earth. And then we'll go ahead and go over to Saturn. So this is a difficulty 1 maneuver to use the aero braking node. And 1 Atlas should be enough to do it if I did my math correctly here. So we'll use that. The payload right now is 17, difficulty of 1, so yep, that'll be fine. And that's going to go from Saturn Flyby over to Saturn Orbit. There's no Saturn hazard to worry about with this ship. So from Saturn Orbit, we'll move over into Titan Orbit, and that's another difficulty 1 maneuver with the aero braking node. And to do that, I'm going to use my final Atlas rocket that's attached to it. And from here, it's just a matter of landing on Titan. It's a 0 difficulty maneuver. It does not have a re-entry hazard. The landing is optional, so we'll go ahead and land on Titan. And with that, that's the Man on Titan mission. That's Man on Titan and back, because I brought a station out there. At this point, there's really nothing else they can do. They're in a habitat, they are 2 astronauts, and they've got 4 food. It's 1983, so they'll eat one at the end of 83, 84, 85, and 86. And we'll say either at the end of 1986, another space agency has sent off a supply of food to Titan, or maybe they found some food on the surface. But they'll be okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave that there and not touch that for the rest of the game, because they're done. They'll survive till the end of the game, and that'll be the end of that. With my final $5, I'll go ahead and buy a pilot. Moving on to 1984. Money comes back. Alright, so in 1984, what I'm going to buy is a space habitat, a food, a medical supply, another medic, and 3 Juno rockets. So we're going to launch on 2 Saturn rockets. That's enough for a payload of 20. The space habitat, the 3 astronauts I have on the ground, that's a pilot and 2 medics, so they don't take up any payload space here. A Juno rocket of food, I'm up to 11. Another food and a medical supply, that's 13. And I've got a few other things sitting on the ground here. A probe, 3 Junos. I'll go ahead and launch that up as well. I'll go ahead and launch the science module I have too. I don't know that that'll matter, but we'll send that to space. So they've gone up to space. They're in Earth orbit. I'm going to just... So the first thing I have to do, I do have 3 astronauts here, so I need to check the suborbital space hazard. So the first medic is fine, the second medic is fine, and the pilot is fine. So they're all fine, and I'll just connect these with their appropriate ship here. Alright, so to recap, I put the science module, a probe, and a few of the Juno rockets in just the Earth orbit stack there. I can take this token back as it's not a thing anymore. So right now, as part of what I need to do is go to the moon. So I have a Vostok capsule with my pilot. I have a total of 5 Atlas rockets and 3 Juno rockets. So we're going to go over to lunar orbit. So from Earth orbit to lunar orbit, I've got a payload of 13. I'm going to use 3 of these Atlas rockets to do it. So I'll use 3 Atlas rockets to move the lunar lander from Earth orbit to lunar orbit. And while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and explore it, since I haven't done that yet. Alright, I can explore until there's 1 feature present. The moon has the ability to have 1 feature present on it, so we're going to go ahead and land this ship down on the lunar orbit, or on the moon from lunar orbit. And to do that, I need to use 1 Atlas rocket. I'm also going to leave 1 of these Atlas rockets here in lunar orbit. So I've got a payload of 5 that'll go down from there. So the first thing I need to do is take a landing hazard. It's a minor failure, but because I have a pilot with me, that turns into a success. But what that means is I really need to make sure that I test my landing or bring the pilot out to Mercury with me, because this pilot's coming back. Actually, it doesn't really mean anything, because I think the other one was a success from the previous testing. So it should be okay with the pilot, but we'll go ahead and move down here. And because I have a pilot, I get to pull 2 feature cards. And one of them is spacecraft destroyed, the other one is gold deposits. So I think I'm going to go ahead and choose the gold deposits and put the spacecraft destroyed on the bottom of the pile. While I'm here, I'm going to pick up a sample of the moon. So I've got a Vostok and a lunar sample, difficulty of 2. I'm going to use my 3 remaining Juno rockets to get off the surface and get back up into lunar orbit. I'm going to re-meet up with my Atlas rocket. I'm going to burn that to get back into Earth orbit. At this point, I'm going to drop the moon sample back down to Earth, and in next year, I'll actually get $15 extra. So I'll put that over here just to remember that. But the pilot is back to Earth orbit where there is a habitat over in this other stack. He's going to join it, and his ship is going to join the other part of the stack here. And so he has just returned from the moon, even though he hasn't gone down to Earth because he's out of habitat. So what that means is I did just get man on the moon, lunar sample return, and manned lunar flyby. Alright, and then with the rest of the ship here, I'm just going to make sure I have all the components I need. I've set out the components in front of me just so I can remember what I've got here. These two Saturn rockets over here I burned on a previous maneuver, so they're gone. So I've got the two Saturn rockets as part of this stack. I've been pushing them up into orbit over the past few years. Got a bunch of Atlas rockets, the space station, or the space habitat, 2 medics and a pilot, 3 food, and 2 Juno rockets. So their first maneuver here is going to be to go from Earth orbit to interplanet transfer. That's a difficulty of 3, and I've got a payload mass of 57. So what I'm going to use is 2 Atlas rockets, a Saturn rocket, and a Juno. And I'll make sure the math here is correct. So we've got 24 mass of Atlas rockets, 20 mass of Saturn rockets, so that's 44, 53, and then 57. So it's a total payload of 57. Across a difficulty of 3, the Saturn can do 46 2/3. 2 Atlas rockets are 5 apiece, so I'm up to 56 2/3. And the 1 Juno rocket will provide the final 1/3 thrust I need to get me into interplanet transfer. And because they're in a habitat, they don't care about this radiation hazard. And because they're in a habitat, they have a seating of 20. There's 3 of them, so they'll be fine. So they're going to move out to the interplanet transfer, and that'll take a year to get out. Nope, not that one. That will take a year to get out there. At the end of the year, they're going to consume one of their food, and we'll move to 1985. We will get our money back, which is important because I need to finish testing landing. So I've got quite a few things still left in Earth orbit here. I've got several Juno rockets, so I'm just going to take 2 of them and test land them. The first one is a minor failure, pay to remove that, and then the last one is a success, so I'll get rid of that for free. So landing is now fine, aero braking is fine. The only thing that I haven't tested is re-entry and synthesis, but neither of those really matter. At this point, the money doesn't matter too much. I could probably try to run out and do the lunar experiment in time, but I don't think I need those points to go ahead and to finish this game. So we are in interplanet transfer with our Mercury ship. It's moving to Mercury flyby, and to do that I need a Saturn and 3 Atlas rockets. So the payload here is going to be 21 plus 3, that's 24. And then across a difficulty of 5, the Saturn can do 20, and the Atlas can each do 1 2/5. So you add that up, and that's just over 24. So again, just barely, but it's enough. So that's going to go out to Mercury flyby. And that's another 1-year maneuver. Oh, I forgot to take the time token off before, but that time token will be for that. Coming around, so now we're moving on to 1986. At the end of 1985, they eat a food. The time token comes off. They are in Mercury flyby. To go from Mercury flyby to Mercury orbit, that's a difficulty of 2. I'm going to use 2 of the Atlas rockets. It's a difficulty of 2. So they can do 19 total payload. I've only got 11 here. 15 with the other Atlas rocket, so that's enough. So that's moving on to Mercury orbit. And then once I'm in Mercury orbit, I'm going to move down to Mercury. It's a difficulty of 2. So I'll use an Atlas and the Juno rocket I brought with me to go down to Mercury's surface. So before I do that, I'll flip it over. There's nothing on Mercury, so I'll move down there. And after landing there, I've just gotten Mercury lander and man on Mercury. And at the end of the year, they consume food. So I'll just say the same thing for them. Some other space agency helped us out and sent a shipment of food. But at the end of 1986, when the game ends, they have a food to consume, so they're fine. We don't lose them. And now that that's done, now that they're on Mercury, that's the end of the game. Okay, so at the end of the game, I've added up the points, and what I've gotten over here on the side is 181, and what's remaining on the top of the board over there is 157. So it was quite close, but I am over the 50% that I need to win the game. I also completed all 6 of the outer planet non-explorable missions: the Jupiter System Survey, Io, Europa, Callisto, Saturn, and Titan surveys. Those are all completed as well. When I flipped over a lot of the Jupiter missions, I assumed I'd be doing some kind of Jupiter outer planet mission at the end of the game. But then once Man on Titan and Saturn Flyby came up, I figured that was probably an easier, and I think it might have actually been worth more points also. So an easier mission. It's about the same amount of points I had in the Jupiter missions as the Saturn missions. So went for Saturn, and then Mercury. It's a lot of rockets to get out there if you're not using ion engines. I had to get 2 Saturn rockets up into orbit to use in the future maneuvers. So typically, when I'm doing, especially with outer planets, I really like to use ion engines, but I thought I'd try something a little different this time. Ion engines are very handy, especially out in Jupiter. You have to do a little bit more advanced planning in terms of like making sure you have enough food for the trip and making sure you're hitting all of the transfer windows completely or correctly. But you can really go out there with a lot less mass, and what that really means is you don't have to push nearly as much rocketry up from Earth into Earth orbit to complete a lot of these missions. This one was also a little bit weird because I did not explore Mars or Phobos, and I didn't explore the moon until like 1984. So much of what I had to end up doing to complete this was get out to the outer planets as quickly as possible. I took some pretty big risks at the very beginning of the game with with just launching things on the Saturn rockets. That doesn't always turn out that way. But yeah, since I never flipped over Mars, it's possible there could be life there. I don't know. There could have been life on Enceladus. I don't know. But because I didn't have I never found life, I never had to collect life and bring it back to Earth. So had I ended up flipping over Enceladus or Mars and there had been life there, I would have gotten that 10-point mission to survey it, but then that would have been 40 points left on the board, and it would have been very close. I probably would have had to go for Lunar Experiment in that last turn just to get that completed. I don't know if that would have been possible or not, but I would have had to try. Man on Ceres is a pretty difficult mission if you're not using ion engines. Man on Mars, I was really going to try to go do a mission out to Mars to get the Man on Mars and the Phobos sample return and start collecting those Mars occupation points as quickly as I could. But I determined that the efforts were better used elsewhere, especially once I figured out that Man on Mercury could be done, even though with some difficulty. I figured that was probably the safer bet to go that way. So again, thank you for watching, and hope you get to play this game soon. It's a lot of fun, and certainly recommend it. Thanks.